Do you see this magic mask rotoscoping results? That's a problem if you're looking close for compositing. See those contaminated color details in the soft edge? That's not necessarily because Magic Mask gave me a bad mask. It's not at all. It's because there's detail in the defocused or motion blurred edges. But here's the fix you're going to be able to do by the end of this tutorial. And no, we're not going to cheat this with just doing a simple erode. Today I want to share with you an advanced technique on how we can manipulate the RGB color foreground completely separately from its AI generated magic mask transparency, the alpha channel, and you'll still gain all the speed benefits that's inherent to working with Magic Mask. This is going to help you rotoscope any foreground object that has defocused or motion blurred edges just to build a better composite in DaVinci Resolve Fusion. The footage is up on Cutting Club, chapters are marked, let's start. So this is the shot we're going to work with today. I purposely picked a shot that's not super easy. We're going to replace the Chipotle sign that's back there and put whatever else we want in there. Maybe we had to remove it for legal reasons, but we want to retain all of the detail and the extent of this current motion blur. And this technique is going to allow us to do that. But first, we need to denoise the footage. I'm going to show you tools I actually use in production to do this, but you can use the built-in tools as well. In my mind, there's two essential tools that are plugins if you're going to do compositing in DaVinci Resolve Fusion. The first of which that I love is Neat Video's Reduce Noise. So I'll load that right after the footage, and this is called Neat, or it's Reduce Noise 6 is what it's actually called. The way it works, you just hit Prepare Noise Print. It opens up the interface over here as an OFX plugin, and I just hit Auto Profile, and it looks for an area that has no features. And it found an area that was blurred on his face that actually does have no features. I'll hit Profile Check if I want to see what it's actually doing, and it looks like it'll do a fine job. I'll just hit Apply, and that's basically it. So if I want to take a look at the result, pick and flick that into the viewer, it's nice and smoothed out. This is going to help a lot when we go to paint this out with an edge extension technique that you're going to learn pretty shortly here. Now, anytime you do noise reduction on a comp in Fusion, I think it's a great idea to consider caching it out to disk so that this doesn't have to recalculate and be a burden on your system later on. So the way I do that is after the noise reduction node, it could be the built-in noise reduction, just right click on it, say cache to disk, and enable lock branch, lock cache, hit pre-render. And now from this point forward, it doesn't have to do that extra math. Chapter 2, Pulling the Magic Mask. Now, a lot of you might be unaware, but Magic Mask is trained on Rec 709 or sRGB images to, find the edges of details and stuff. And the footage I'm working with is actually linear. It's ASYS CG, so it's AP1 linear. So the first thing I need to do is get this into Rec 709 before I pull the Magic Mask. That will always give you better results from all the testing I've done over the years. So to do that, I'm going to hit Shift Space, CST to load that into the flow. Just hook that guy up. And here's something to note. Input color space is going to be AP1, and there's a little shortcut. If you click the input color space first and then hit the A key, it takes you straight to the A's in the list. Now, this is not big ASYS, this is little ASYS is what I call it, but it's AP1, and then the gamma is going to be linear. So I'm typing L to jump straight to the L's in the list, and then output is pretty simple. If I just click this and hit R, Rec 709, Rec 709, and go ahead and sure you can apply the tone mapping and all that. Now because this is turned on, my viewing LUT is no longer needed, at least temporarily, but we're all set up to pull a Magic Mask on this result. So after the color space transform, just Magic Mask, if I could type properly, this is Magic Mask 2 that came out in Resolve 20, which is amazing. It's really fantastic. Another little tip here, when you click to do your Magic Mask, if you just click, you kind of lose everything right away because of this post multiply image checkbox. I like to deselect it and then click. This came as a tip from a comment in a past video. I can't remember who told me that, but it's great. I'm very thankful for you doing that. The other thing I was going to mention is I want to use the better mode over here, not the faster mode, so that I get a nice soft matte, which is what I want to retain the motion blur. Just 2 clicks is all I need. I needed his face, the hair, and then we can just hit track forward and track backwards. Okay, now I can go ahead and hit post multiply, and what you'll find is you're going to carry along details of that original background. And what I want to do is just show you this a little bit closer what the whole problem is. The reason for making this tutorial is if I were to comp this result of this Magic Mask Roto over, some sort of a solid background, how much of that Chipotle background, no matter what I'm doing at the sign replacement, is going to carry along. And if you continue on in this in-depth tutorial, it is chapter marked, you're going to understand how you can get rid of that, and you'll be able to retain all of that original blur extension that's in that original plate. Tracking the sign. Now, I want to share with you how I actually use Mocha Pro to do this. You can do this with the built-in planar tracker as well. I just feel like I might as well show you what I actually use, which is Mocha Pro. That can be selected. It's an OFX plugin. It's probably the most expensive plugin that I use, but I find it really, really useful because I can solve basically any shot with it. With Mocha Pro loaded, I will just say launch Mocha UI, and it'll just take a second. It'll open up the OFX interface over here. And the first thing you want to think about when you're doing tracking, whether it's in Mocha or it's in the Resolve Planar Tracker, is you want to take care of your occlusions first. So whatever's closest to the camera needs to be figured out first. And ultimately, I'm looking for tracking data for this sign back here, but I need to first knock out the guy. And the way I'm going to do that in Mocha Pro is you have this object select button over here, which is kind of like the magic mask of Mocha. You just click on the object that you want to make a selection of. It thinks for a second real hard. You click again, just like in Resolve Fusion, to get sort of a selection of it. And if you want to add to it, there's these add buttons to this tool down here. This little brush will let you actually brush in more details if you wanted to. And then once you're happy with the selection, it hasn't actually made it a spline yet. You just go to this pick tool and it creates a spline. Now there's some weird stuff that's happened over here, so I would just select those points and delete it. Now this spline can actually be tracked a lot like Magic Mask. All you need to do is just make sure that you're on the matte tab, you say generate object matte, that's enabled, and I want to turn this box on because I want to actually dilate the matte. I want to make it grow out further from where it currently exists so that none of these blurry motion blurred edges affect the tracking data underneath, because I want really solid tracking data for the Chipotle sign. Once that's set, I just hit this little track forward and backwards button, and you'll see that yellow outline is the area we're going to actually use as a garbage matte. Now that that's done, I will just come over here, give it a name, garbage, and this is also known as like an occlusion mask if you use the DaVinci Resolve Planar Tracker. And then the idea is I will create another shape to get my actual tracking data for the Chipotle sign. So now that that's tracked, I turn off the gear cog, that right there, so it's not processing again. And then I'm going to grab, you could use a B-spline, X-spline, or this rectangle. Actually, I want to give you a little extra tip. If you use Mocha and you want to actually use the shapes in Resolve, don't use X-splines. If you're trying to use it for roto shapes, use the B-splines because they don't have like bajillions of points on them, something I just recently discovered and learned. But we don't really need it for this. I'm just going to use the rectangle tool, and you just want to make sure it's just slightly outside the extents of that front sign there. And it needs to live beneath the garbage mat. That's the way that Mocha knows to use that as a garbage mat. It has to just live as a layer beneath it. Maybe I'll give this, chip track or something like that. And then the only thing else, I'm going to come down here to my track tab. And again, I'm in the classic mode. If you're in essentials, get used to the classic mode. It has all of the bells and whistles that you might want. I want to turn on perspective as well, so we get the full 3D, the full enchilada of the track. I will hit, actually before I do that, I want to just demonstrate. If you hit option 1, this is the area that the tracking data is going to look for, that pinkish area, because I'm occluding the dude. So that was the whole purpose of putting that as a layer above. And this turned back on. I want to disable that garbage mat. I don't want that to process again. So I'm just going to be pulling pixels from here to get the data. Oh, and the other thing I would suggest you always do, turn on your surface tool, because the surface tool is actually the thing that shows the results of the tracking data. If the shape moves weird, it doesn't necessarily mean that the track data is weird, and vice versa is not always the case. So turn that on. You can also turn on this grid, and it helps give you indications if there's any sort of bad track data. But with all that done, I'm just going to hit track forward. Actually, you can hit track forward and backwards if you start on a middle frame. And as I play through, I purposely picked a shot that's really, really easy to track so we can focus more on the edge extension of the motion blur of the dude. But the only other thing that I want to point out that is really good to think about doing is if you don't know the aspect ratio of the replacement you're doing on the background, is to extend your tracking data to the entire edges of the frame, because I'm going to insert my logo in there and I don't know how the aspect ratio, the resolution of my logo compares to this. So this little last step does actually matter. And so what I'll do is just pick a reference frame that I want to like cue everything up and set everything into place on. And the reference frame I'll just do as the very first frame. And the way I tell Mocha what that reference frame is, you just come up here to this expand surface button right next to the grid, and you can see that just expanded the corners of a corner pin to those edges. All you do after that, you say export track. I'm going to use Fusion tracking data, copy to clipboard, Command C, Command Q. That's saved within the comp if I ever need it again, but I won't. I'll hit Command V. And by the way, I'll include this script into the Cutting Club files, so you can use this same one if you want and not have to have Mocha Pro. In fact, I'll delete Mocha Pro so it's not in there. Now the tracker node is loaded. You can see it's expanded to the corners, which basically means at frame 0, we're going to line up my replacement sign, and then we'll just mask it off is basically the workflow on that. The tracker list has these checkboxes. I want to make sure, I'm going to click them each twice so that I don't modify that data at all. And then the operation mode under operation needs to be set to corner positioning. So once you've selected that into the tracker node over here, we take our background footage and we figure out what's our foreground going to be. I want to first get a color on there, and I need to get my logo on there. So I'm going to grab a background node to get some color, like a whatever this background color is. I'll steal that by just clicking and dragging, and then we can stick this into that foreground section there, and you'll see it's doing some movement, right? Where it's not masked off to the rest of the frame yet, but we've got the proper tracking data movement going in there. Next thing I want to do, and the reason I did expand it to surface again is because when you use the tracker node, it basically pulls these corners in and does a distortion. And if you don't set it to a reference frame, you can't really ensure that your replacements aren't messing with the aspect ratios. Media pool is going to have my logo, Creative Video Tips logo. It's right there. And I'm just going to comp this over the top of this background. So I'm going to take what I want on top, kiss it to what I want behind. That gives us our merge. And at this point, we could stick this into the tracker. And now we're slightly moving this. But what the advantage that this gives me is I can use this setup without doing any sort of weird distortions. I'm going to hit XF to add a transform node to here. And we'll just need to position this once it's masked off. And several ways you can mask this off. The way I like to apply a mask to all of this after the fact is just using a brightness contrast node, believe it or not. And the reason why it's a very lightweight node. It doesn't do a lot of taxing on the system. And so the brightness contrast node has a mask input. So what am I going to do? I'm going to grab a polygon mask to mask it off. So polygon mask, I need to actually see the original image. So I'm loading the results of the reduced noise, going to my first frame, the reference frame that the tracking data is based off of. And I'll just come into the viewer and click around. So I'm clicking upper left, zooming around, and I just want to get a nice close enough edge. Of course, you can refine this afterwards. And to close up a mask, I use Shift O. Now, if I plug this into the brightness contrast node, look at the result. Hadn't done anything yet because the brightness contrast node setting, we need to say multiply by mask. And that sort of cut it out. And now if you take a look at this, we're starting to get somewhere, right? Because we've set this up in this manner, please screenshot this to your heart's content. I can take this transform, move this wherever it needs to go, and it has not been distorted by the corner pin data. That's why I did the expanded surface function of it, right? Another thing to think about is, well, maybe I want to get some color into this this image right here. Well, I can easily do that by actually just using this as a mask. See, I actually have transparency. There's this checkerboard right there.
So maybe I just grab another node over here, another background node, give it some color. Maybe we'll do, I don't know, how about a blue? I think a blue could look kind of nice. And the way this would work, to colorize this, let's look at the results of the tracker. I'm going to plug this as an actual mask into the background. And see, it's sort of colorized it for us. And from here, we go into the transform node, and looks like we've actually gone, because it has reset resolution. I'm glad this sort of stuff happened. It knocked me way up above the frame. So you can still bring this back down and reposition it, cut it out afterwards, and place it into the scene wherever you need to do that. You might need to, or think about like rotating this. That's why that separate transform is there and really handy. You might even do most of the time you probably want to do a little bit of a corner positioning before it hits the tracker so that all that fits. That probably wasn't the correct angle. Definitely don't want to mess with the aspect ratio of a client's logo. But one thing you could do is you could expand this till you see those flat edges, get the angle set, and then bring it back down. If the lines were like parallel on the sides, that could be a good way of doing it. But you know what? You could play with this to your heart's content on the inserts with drop shadows, fractal, or any sort of noise and patterns and stuff to make it look more realistic. In fact, let's just take a look and see what this is giving us as it currently stands, and then we'll move on to the really juicy, exciting stuff, edge extensions. So the output of the tracker node currently is actually doing our merge for us. And anytime I use the tracker node in here, I actually like to use it as a merge set to foreground only. And this is going to do two things for me. One, it gives me the alpha. So I actually can composite this however I want. It's also going to allow us to think in layers a little bit better. So anytime we're doing things with edge extensions, we want to limit where we're doing the edge extension. And this is really important with a merge type that you probably never use that's coming up shortly. But the idea here is we'll start with our original background. So if I just grab another merge tool, take our original background, feed our new sign on top of it, and then after this, we'll put our magic mask result. So I'll grab another merge, and we're just merging on top of merges. And I'll take this result over here. I'm hitting Alt to drag our little pipe connector. And we do have a color discrepancy. That's because we did this color space transform just to get the better magic mask. So I'll just turn that off. And we'll take a look at this result that we're getting. So the tracking's not bad. The sign does need motion blur, but here's the thing. Here's the big kicker. We come through here, and I'll increase the contrast. I'm just holding the viewlet so I can gamma down and gain up a little bit. See, I see some of that original sign in there. That's not necessarily because Magic Mask gave me a bad mask. It's not at all. It's because there's detail in the defocused or motion blurred edges. See, there's the chili pepper right there over my sign. I don't want that. Manipulating Magic Mask. So now that we've got our tracker result, that is currently set to corner positioning foreground only. That's looking good. It's merged over our original background. We're going to look at how we split out the result of the Magic Mask so we can manipulate color and the mask completely separately, because we still have this Chipotle stuff that's mixed in over there. The way we're going to manipulate it is 2 bitmap mask streams. 2 bitmap mask streams. Say that 2 times fast. Shift space, bitmap. Bitmap basically takes a color image and just outputs a mask from it. So it's a great way to concatenate mask, but we're going to build one stream over here that's going to just be focused on the actual alpha channel of the mask. So if you're familiar with like chroma keying, where you have a core matte that's hard and an edge mask that's soft, it's kind of the same idea. We're going to use a core matte to actually yank colors out. And we're going to use this edge mask to then be the actual mask that tries to match the original plate. That's the idea. So with this mask selected, just make sure your channel is set to alpha. I'll hit Command-C, Command-V to make a copy. This version of the mask is going to be hard and on the inside to grab colors. So let's focus on the color part first, because I think that's fun. After the bitmap mask itself, I'm going to add a blur node to it. And the reason I'm adding a blur is because we have all this detail here. We're going to need a blur on both of these, but having 2 streams, we can manipulate them separately to get the most detail.
without having to go and actually rotoscope something. So I'm going to click the blur tool that's up there in the list and reconnect it to the yellow image input of it. And with it selected, I'm just going to deselect the red, green, and blue channels and maybe give it a little bit more blur until I lose the details there. And after this, I need to manipulate this to make the mask not so soft and also erode it or shrink it inside of where all the soft edges are from the original pixels. The way I'm going to do that is one of my favorite tools in here, the brightness and contrast tool. A lot of folks think Fusion has all these rudimentary tools. These are the fundamental building blocks to compositing, this list up here. And they can be used to do a lot more than you think. You think brightness contrast is just to brighten an image? I'm actually going to manipulate the mask with it and show you how right now. So with this loaded into the viewer, I'm going to deselect, again, red, green, and blue, and only work on the alpha of it. And anytime you do color corrections to an alpha channel, I'm going to tell you this right now because you're going to forget it. I forget it all the time. We have the potential of creating really bad alpha values really quickly. And so in the brightness contrast tool, when we're working on alphas, make sure you clip the black, clip the white, and it makes them so they don't go negative. They stay between 0 and 1. Now, to make it hard, all I'll do is adjust this threshold. Bring it towards the middle is the idea. So when you bring this threshold low and high towards the middle, it hardens up. It makes the blacks blacker, the whites whiter, and it makes a hard edge in the middle. If you're OCD about it, like me, you might just come in and say 0.5, and then you can't have both be 0.5, so I might do 50001 or something. And the idea is it takes off that anti-aliasing, that smooth edge that's on it. So we get a really precise pixel value that's going to be extended. Essentially what's going to happen is where this line sits is the color that's going to be yanked out and used underneath our motion blurred image. So that's the main thing there. We're basically going to do some gamma eroding. So that's the other tool. That's gamma is going to shrink the matte in, and it can also expand it. It can also, you can dilate with gamma. That's basically what an erode dilate is. But we can use this, however we need to. And how do we figure out how far in we need to make this for the color change to work? I would suggest loading the original into the image buffer so we can split wipe between them. The way that works is right now I'm just looking at the A buffer, but if you come up here and choose buffer B, with this is going to be your comma, period, and slash keys. Buffer B, make sure you load your, it's always, I think of it B as before. Load your image into the B buffer, and then you can change it to the split wipe so we can see them overlaid on top. And that's going to be the slash key. So if I come over here and we'll just move this around. If you're way off to the side, you just hit Option and Command and it jumps right to your cursor when you click. The idea is I want to erode this with my gamma. That's what's going to move the mask line in and out so that it's inside where there's like a solid color value here that I can use to extend in the next step. So to do that, I will just take my gamma and just yank this towards the left until it's nicely sitting inside of there. Something like that should work. Not too bad, right? So next up, I'm just going to hit period, just so we see our A buffer. We're going to extend those color pixels out. And the way I'm going to do that is using a tool that's used for keying typically. It's actually called the Clean Plate tool. It's used for evening out green screens and helping the delta keyer. But we can use it in this scenario too. It's like a pixel spread, just shift spacing to get clean plate. Or in Nuke, they call it the IBK color gizmo, I believe. But what I want to feed the clean plate is the original image. So I'm just pulling this before it even hits Magic Mask. This is just the original from my noise reduce, my denoise plate. Load that into there. And the clean plate node has a garbage matte input, and that's what we're using this for. This is going to be our garbage matte. It could be a manually rotoscoped version of a matte too. So if you don't want to use Magic Mask, this technique totally works there too. You even have more control, just might not be as fast. Right click and drop this onto the garbage matte input of there, and you see it's made like a stencil cutout. I'm going to the mask tab of it, garbage matte invert, just as the opposite of that. And now under the clean plate tool, we have essentially what's like a blur divide to grow those edges out perpendicular to where that edge is. And we can even hit fill, And what this has given us is accurate colors to the foreground plate. It has no transparency, but that's why we split Magic Mask into two parts. The next piece of it is we're going to actually manipulate the Magic Mask a little bit so we get rid of that detail, and then we can just slap this all back together. So this is the color information that we're looking for. It's the actual colors of that foreground plate just extended. And we'll take a look at this stream over here, which is going to be just used for the mask. So just like we did before, to remove details, we blur them. So I'll grab another blur tool. And I love having this separate so we can really fine tune things as we need. I just want to blur the alpha channel, and I just want to lose the details. So maybe just a value of 7 or something on this example probably is going to work just fine. If you need to contract it, you can gamma down on a brightness contrast. We can mask paint after this if there's like a flicker and that sort of stuff. But I want to keep this thing moving along. So the idea is we're going to take this color information and copy this alpha into it and multiply it out. The tool I use to do that is called matte control. And so that'll go right after clean plate tool. It's this button right here that has like that little, I guess it's like a little stencil hole through it. But in the matte control node, we're taking the color image input into the background of matte control, taking the mask that we modified, and that's going into the foreground input. That's how I like to use this. You can use this in multiple ways, but when you use the green stream over here going into matte control, it basically gives you functionality to use these controls over here. That's why I like it. The other thing is we'll just change the combine mode to combine the alpha, and the operation is copying the alpha channel. So copy means it's replacing it. So if it had an alpha channel, it's copying the new one in there, the old one's gone. I think of it as replace, at least. Maybe I'm wrong. But the last piece of it is you need to post multiply the image. That does like a pre-multiplication afterwards is essentially what that is. So we've got our edge extended version of the dude with the correct colors. And in fact, if we take a look here, we should have, let's take a look at the clean plate without. So Command P, you can see there it was before, and there it is after. And I still have all that nice fall off. I haven't shrunken the dude in, so he's super, super small. I'll tell you, where this really is helpful is if you do screen replacements for phones, and you got a phone swipe that, you can't really shrink the thumb in because it would look weird outside of the phone, or you'd have a super skinny thumb. This is a great scenario where you might use this technique besides a dude occluding a sign. The only thing is that you take a look, we've edge extended all over in all these other areas that are not areas that are getting replaced. So the way we work with just extending the areas that are in the sign is we use the merge mode operation that's called Atop. So Atop is basically going to just use the background, which is what we want, to cut out the foreground, which is just the patch of the edge extension. So the way we'll take a look at this is we got this result of this tracker here, and I will grab a new merge node. And this merge node is going to take this sort of layer that's just this, and we're going to merge our pre-multiplied, or whatever it's called, post-multiply image on the matte control, stick that into here. And because we don't want to do edge extension on this part of the plate, because we want to affect the plate the least possible to do our effects, on this merge node, we say operator is called Atop. Okay, so it basically says, okay, we're doing our edge extension from our fancy Magic Mask Roto over here, but we're only doing it exactly within the replacement section. And that's one reason when I do the tracker node, I want it to be foreground only so I can isolate that. And I can say I want to be able to access the alpha channel outside that sign replacement. So after this, all you need to do is just merge this over the original footage, and you've got a shot that's done. I will tell you one more thing, just in case I didn't say this. If you don't want to use clean plate, the other two techniques that I'm aware of, you can do a blur divide technique, and you can also use the smear tool that's in the paint tool and work frame by frame. That is another valid way of doing this sort of work. But just think in layers. Think furthest from camera, take care of that with whatever tracking and clean up, then what's next to camera, and just as things get closer and closer to camera, just think of how am I going to combine these merge layers. So here's my original
here's this layer that has this. Here's, okay, we're putting the patch, and then on the top of all of it, here is the final results. And you're going to get great results without having to know a whole lot, to be honest. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention, the reason we denoised at the beginning is because we did this blurring. You're going to want to add the noise back at the end. So you could either use a fake simulated noise, or you could regrain with stuff from the original plate that's maybe offset, or use a tool called Grain Sync. I've got a tutorial on how you can regrain that's up on screen right now. Hey, my name is Chadwick. I'm a DaVinci Resolve Master Trainer based here in New York. I work on high-end commercials, and I'm just so thankful that you would spend time with me. And because there's so much more to learn, I'll see you in the next video.